Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Game of Serfs, Book 6, by Michael Anderle, narrated by Todd Menesses. Chapter 1. Morning, sunlight, right in his face. Benjy didn't want to open his eyes, but the curtain he'd pulled over the window was open. He wasn't alone in the room anymore. Had he been alone in the room? The days were melding together in his mind, but it felt like a Monday. They'd maintained a semblance of order with the days of the week, months, and years. Was it exactly how it had been before? Probably not, but it helped them keep their schedules.
"Up and at 'em. You won't get anything done lazing around in bed all day."
Jenny. It figured. Benjy grumbled and pulled his pillow over his head to give himself a few more precious minutes of sleep. It wouldn't work, but he needed to try anyway. Jenny tugged the pillow off his face and dragged him to the edge of the bed.
"What's the matter?"
She placed a hand on his forehead before patting his cheek.
"Didn't sleep well last night?"
Not really.
"You haven't been getting much sleep most nights."
Benjy shrugged. She'd been trying to get him to talk about his poor sleep for weeks. He probably should discuss it, but nothing came to mind. What was there to talk about? He slept fine during the day. He'd tried it the few opportunities he'd had, and it was perfect. Lots of interruptions, but after the third attempt, he'd locked his door and enjoyed the best 6 hours of his life. The work everyone needed him for fell within the daytime hours. Sleeping at night was his only option. Most nights people still called him into meetings and conversations, wanting his input. Nightmares he didn't quite remember woke him in a cold sweat. He felt slimy afterward, like he'd been swimming through murky swamp water. The feeling stuck until he tossed and turned into another fitful dream. Jenny would have noticed. She was an intensely private person and likely assumed he was too. Benjy didn't know how to broach the subject with her. Marty would suspect something was wrong. He'd sit him down for hours on end to find its source. Benjy didn't want to think about it because he was certain no magic was involved. They'd been through their fair share of trauma. Their last fight with Anderle had been the worst of it. Touching the mind of something that dark and malevolent for 1 second had seared his mind. Worse, he didn't understand what it had pushed on him. So many different presences resided in his mind, it was difficult to keep track of them. He needed professional help, lots of it. A time would come when he would need to be locked up to prevent endangering himself and others. The power from the lair was useful, but it exacted a steady cost from him.
"Benjy."
"What?"
"Talk to me. What's going on?"
She reached over and rested a hand on his shoulder.
"Is it your wounds? We've been getting used to Marty snapping his fingers and making it all so, but a few months should have healed those injuries by now."
"They're healing, but not as fast as they should be." Benjy rolled his shoulder before pulling a shirt over his head, careful not to touch the bandages on his chest and arms. Marty's magic didn't impact the wounds, which was worrisome. Whenever he tried, it felt like they sucked the magic into themselves, like the injuries drew the magic from Marty. Benjy felt it in his veins for a while after. Marty was reading into that. For the moment, Benjy needed regular healing. The medical team had sutured the wounds and cleaned them regularly. They changed the bandages once a day. He had orders not to do any heavy lifting or arduous labor while he recovered. He'd tried to obey with mixed results. He didn't want people to think he was about to keel over. It wouldn't do them any favors with morale. People were anxious after the battles they'd suffered. He'd keep up appearances no matter how difficult it was or what the nurse instructed. Jenny scowled at him. She watched him get dressed without saying a word. He should speak, but there wasn't much to say. Nothing came to mind. "It's run-of-the-mill post-traumatic stress." When he said it, it sounded lame. "I'm working on it as best I can. Nothing I can do but work through the issues, right?"
You don't have to work through them on your own.
Jenny raised an eyebrow.
If you stick with this heavy is the head that wears the crown bullshit, I'm going to smack you.
Smack me? Where?
He couldn't resist. The back of the head usually gets your attention the fastest.
Jenny picked up a piece of his armor and handed it to him.
Either you get your head on straight, or I'll do it for you.
You're always so helpful. Benjy smirked as he accepted the breastplate and strapped it on.
You're damn right. If you don't want me to throw down, we'll get it done.
Benjy smiled. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why are you handing me my armor? Benjy patted his breastplate and nodded at the pauldrons Jenny offered him. I'm all for suiting up, but unless I need to involve myself in a battle, I thought I wasn't supposed to carry extra weight.
First of all, this armor isn't heavy enough to qualify as heavy lifting. Second, Marty wants you worked up and ready for the next trial. I thought he told you that last night.
Oh, right. They hadn't considered that for a while. They would wait until he was fully recovered and prepared for whatever the next trial would entail. He wouldn't run it while nursing wounds galore. Marty had brought it up last night. It was time they got going. Benjy forgot. His mind was all over the place. He didn't think Marty meant immediately. Then again, they'd been delayed for months. He had to get in the saddle again. Metaphorically. The last time he rode, he tore his sutures. Dawn Chaser hadn't been happy about that and dragged his trigger-happy ass back to the nurse before he worsened it. Jenny helped him get into his armor before heading off. She'd tell Marty that Benjy was ready for whatever the wizard had in store for him. Marty might not have anything prepared for him yet. The wizard wasn't a focused researcher. He had plenty to look into. Whatever the people of old liked doing, they sure as fuck loved documenting everything. Unfortunately, they had left several accounts about everything. Those recordings weren't the most accurate or reliable. Many rivalries lingered. While some considered the works of one wizard to be great successes, others, who hated that wizard, would depict it as a middling result, if not an outright disaster. Those who depicted events they hadn't seen themselves were worse. Some referenced writings from before their times, including their attempts at interpretations. A lot of shit got lost in translation. Marty had a ravenous appetite for anything to do with magic. He would go on tangents for weeks trying to find original documents about something of interest that had nothing to do with the trials. Benjy had seen it happen in real time. Watching the wizard's mind at work was fascinating and frustrating. They sat on massive amounts of untapped power they could use if Benjy met those trials. They were also dealing with an enemy they didn't understand. Few writings mentioned the invader, mostly describing it as a creature that terrified the dragons. The remaining writings offered conjectures of mindless praise for the creatures, likely from people it invaded who didn't have another choice. Benjy didn't want to dwell on it. He spent his nights thinking about whatever the blackness was. Why would a dragon know what it was and fear it would accept it in its mind? That was his assumption. Benjy detected a sense of acceptance in Anderle. Anderle feared the creature, but the embarrassment of defeat intimidated him more. It hadn't been a peaceful transition of power. The dragon thought it could regain control from the invading monster. He'd fought for his life to pull himself back. If any creature could be so arrogant to think it could recover from such possession, it would have been a dragon. The fact that so few had been able to probably scared them the most. A powerful creature losing its strength couldn't be a pleasant experience.
Benjy, you coming?
He gritted his teeth and pulled his straps to ensure they were all in place. If he were supposed to look the best for the people who sought the smallest point of weakness, his armor falling away would get them talking. They didn't want him to fail. Once one person talked, everyone would. What took root as a seed of doubt would turn into a poisonous vine that could spread across their home. He drew his sword and inspected it. He would have preferred the dragon lance. Marty had tried to put it back together again. Like his healing abilities, all the magic he put into the weapon's repair disappeared. Benjy wouldn't think about it. They would have to empower the fakes they still had or build them on their own. When Marty was tired of researching the trials, weapon repair was his tangent. Benjy stepped out and approached the small troop of bodyguards waiting for him to show. Jenny was there, too. She motioned for him to follow her. They didn't say a word. Benjy considered breakfast before he went down to deal with Marty. The wizard forgot to eat when he was deep in the zone. Benjy had made a point of enlisting his assistance to ensure Marty was fed and watered. They didn't need their wizard to be killed by dehydration when they relied on him the most. Benjy could look out for everyone but himself. Maybe it was time to ask Jenny to watch out for him as he did for her and Marty. He felt like a prize-fighter exiting his locker room for a big match. Benjy had never experienced that, but he imagined this was how those guys walked out of the tunnel. Nervous energy pumped through every vein. He wanted to remain focused as they entered Marty's sanctum. He tucked his helmet under his left arm while he flipped his hair. People told him the beard aged him and made him look more mature. He thought it was an itchy mask. Let the people think he knew what he was doing. Jenny, Marty, and the others who knew what was up worked without the pressure of having people up their asses. That was his job. Step forward and fuck up the dragons when they showed. Otherwise, he was a lightning rod for everyone else in a leadership position. Marty was already at work. Benjy doubted his friend and oldest partner in this magic nonsense managed any sleep. His white hair was a mess, sporting a couple of scorch marks. It looked like he'd been playing with electricity the way some stood on end. "How's it going, Doc Brown?" Benjy patted the desk to get Marty's attention.
What?
Marty narrowed his eyes.
Doc Brown? Because of the white hair?
Sure, and the fact that it's standing on end.
What?
Marty looked up and smoothed his hair down.
Right. Good. What are you doing here? I told you to come down here in the morning once you were rested. It is the morning,
Jenny pointed out. Rested up is a lost cause these days. Benjy shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't. He could get work done in the morning, the usual rah-rah stuff the people, especially the dragon hunters, expected from him after George's injury. Once he did that, they could go about their business without him there. He'd nap then. It would have to wait, though. Benjy doubted he could nap if Marty lined up a trial.
Right,
Marty chuckled and tapped his forehead.
Duh. I guess the night got away from me. Keep an eye on that.
Jenny raised an eyebrow.
We need your skinny ass around for a while. You can't work yourself to death.
We'd have to hunt down another wizard. Benjy shook his head. Such a nuisance.
Well, I'm glad that my sticking around is worth so much to you.
Marty grinned and winked.
The wizard seemed confused, though. Why are you wearing all that armor?
I thought you called me down here because you had a trial ready for me.
Didn't I tell you? No, of course I didn't. I only found out about it an hour ago.
The white-haired wizard tilted his head like he wasn't sure about his grip on time.
Might have been longer than that. No, you won't need your war harness. From what I've read about this trial, it's not about combat, but a battle of wills. That doesn't mean we'll send him into it without any protection, right?
Jenny crossed her arms.
Seems like a battle of wills can mean a lot of shit. One interpretation could have him willing a way through a fight with a fucking hippo.
I doubt it'll be anything like that. Marty checked a paper in front of him on the desk. But if he'd face any danger, I've worked up something that should help him stay, alive.
I'll stand over here, brimming with confidence, she retorted.
I'm sorry if this magical stuff is untested. We're not in a position to get guinea pigs to test it. Marty shrugged and pulled out the garments in question. With that said, I trust my work. Our history tells me that you trust it too. So stand over there and brim with confidence quietly. Jenny stuck her tongue out at the wizard when Marty wasn't looking, and Benjy grinned. It was such a juvenile gesture. He'd seen more of it as she came into her own. He trusted Marty's work. It didn't always go the way the wizard intended. It needed tweaking from time to time, but it had kept him alive more times. In their unstable world, that dependability was worth its weight in gold. The clothes Marty produced didn't look like much. When Benjy envisioned protective gear, a plain tunic and breeches didn't come to mind. They seemed unlikely to fight off a stiff breeze. The enchantments I put on them should keep you safe from most conventional damage. Marty shrugged while Benjy removed his armor. And again, this trial is unconventional. Benjy raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. Marty did his best to prepare them for any dangers, but there was precious little written about the trials. They hadn't known to look for anything until one of the texts mentioned it directly. Marty told him he had to read between the lines to discover what people were talking about. Nobody referenced it clearly. They likely didn't want to give other people or dragons hints about how to take full control of their lair. After a while, Marty picked up on hints left behind. They didn't say much, but it was better than nothing.
Sorry, am I late?
Benjy was about to drop his pants when he heard Elaine's voice from the door. Of all the people who stuck with their project around Mount Peel, Benjy trusted her the most. Marty and Jenny were the exceptions. Elaine had arrived relatively late, but she'd proved to be a valuable group member. She was not a yes-man, yes-woman, and called Benjy out on his bullshit more consistently than anyone else. Thanks to the lair's magic, Benjy had power over the people near Peel. Elaine wasn't immune to it, but she was harder to convince. He disliked being challenged at every opportunity, but his preference was irrelevant. No, we're only getting started. Marty motioned for Elaine to sit opposite him at his desk. I guess now wouldn't be the time to ask for privacy while I change, huh? Benjy raised his hands in frustration.
Sure, but it won't do you any good.
Elaine extracted her notes from her bag and laid them out.
Don't worry, I won't be here. I won't look, I promise.
Better fucking not. Jenny narrowed her eyes, pointing 2 fingers at them, before aiming them at the former journalist.
I'm watching you, Shallot. You take one peek and I'll drag you up to the tallest tower here to throw you out.
Elaine rolled her eyes.
Right. You're the jealous type. Like I have any interest in our brave and fearless leader.
That sounded like an insult. Benjy pulled the trousers on first. Should I be insulted?
She called you brave and fearless,
Jenny pointed out. It's a tautology, Marty commented. If you're fearless, you're not brave if you charge into danger. You're stupid. Right. Benjy nodded and pulled the shirt on. Both pieces were comfortable and soft to the touch. Exactly.
I've called you stupid to your face.
Elaine raised an eyebrow.
I don't need a way to make it subtle.
Yet you would. Benjy tapped his nose. You're a journalist. Your weapons are words, so yes. You might tell me to my face when I need to hear it. You'd also slip it by me when you think I wouldn't notice, so you can feel intelligent and superior and shit.
You're too clever.
Elaine faced him and smirked.
Or maybe you're giving me too much credit.
I'm giving you as much credit as you're worth.
Benjy rolled his shoulders and tested his range of motion.
It was limited, and the stitches dug into his skin, but not to the point of opening the wounds.
Think so?
Elaine made a non-committal sound and marked a note in a book. Or pretended to. It didn't matter.
How do you feel?
Jenny patted his shoulder, carefully checking the bandage there. It feels good. Light, comfortable. Can't help the doubt it would push back against anything stronger than a light touch, though.
I can't say it'll help against blunt force, Marty shrugged. I did what I could. It's difficult to create something out of nothing. Any sharp or high-impact attacks on you, anything from a sword to a high-caliber bullet, if anyone's got one of those lying around, will be stopped in its tracks. I tested that a couple of times. It won't leave a bruise. So he's good to go? Elaine tilted her head.
As ready as I'll ever be.
Benjy drew a deep breath and nodded as if convincing himself. He needed fucking coffee, but those supply lines were clogged up. Nothing else but that? The journalist put her notebook down. No extra fanfare, nothing? Charge right into the trial?
We don't need extra noise about this.
Benjy shook his head when he felt a twinge of pain in his ribs.
Nobody else should know. Aside from George and Connor, and Velk, although I haven't heard from him since the snow melted, and he said he wanted to wander the wilds.
Is that what he told you? Elaine sighed. Always thought the way he disappeared was weird.
He said he'd be back when spring sprung, unless he found a fine bitch looking to lift her tail to a lonely wolf.
Benjy raised his hands.
His exact words. A weird fucking laugh, too. The people back then wanted to keep these trials a secret. They might have had a good reason, too. Besides, who knows what effect it'll have on morale if I fail.
No one voiced opposition. The uncomfortable silence probably had more to do with them considering other consequences of his failure. Others could take up the mantle and control the lair if he died. Ditto if he got cut off from the power for his failure. He didn't think that would be so terrible. The voices and memories that weren't his bounced inside his head, distracting him. Without the dragon lance, they'd need to devise a weapon to go against the invader if it reared its head again.
Any other questions?
Marty shook his head. I only wish I could return to the Chamber of Memory before we tried this. Maybe free it from that cranky ice bitch while I'm at it. Cranky ice bitch, right. Elaine muttered around the pen she carried in her mouth when she was lost in thought.
Don't think that'll happen until the trials are over.
Benjy patted the white-haired wizard's shoulder.
We'll see how this goes.
Elaine was right. More fanfare wouldn't be a bad thing. It would level out his stress. He'd forget how much was riding on the trials. Prize fighters had crowds cheering them on. Crowds weren't available for him, though. Jenny gave him a thumbs-up of encouragement as he headed into the chamber of the trial. It wasn't far from where Marty set himself up. He liked to be close to the action, so he'd be the first to know if something went wrong. It resembled the other doors in the castle. Elaine wanted Benjy to share every last fucking detail of what he experienced so she could record it for posterity. She didn't understand that he didn't recall the boring parts sandwiched between the moments of mind-wrenching terror. He didn't remember much about those either, since he was usually running or fighting for his life. Her badgering helped him remember those moments better, but fuck it. That's what body cams were for. Those didn't work around Peel, or anywhere. Magical interference spread and took few prisoners. Benjy shook his head and stared at the door. He needed to focus. He didn't know what he'd face in there, but he should have time to work out his insecurities. Something else to address in therapy, assuming any therapists remained in the world. He pushed through the door, watching and waiting for something to jump at him. When nothing did, he stepped through.
He came face to face with another door. A gate, like what he'd find at the front of a palace. It was open and waiting for him. Not wide open, but cracked enough for him to slip through. Benjy sucked his gut in. A hint of pain rose in his chest when the bars pressed on his injured ribs. It was uncomfortable, but he was through in a second. Benjy turned his attention to what awaited on the other side. He faced a steep set of stairs carved out of plain gray granite. Each riser looked carved for a giant. A couple of steps and a jump would be required to move among them. Pedestals stood adjacent to the levels. Statues of armored knights looked like they guarded the path. The figures were the same dull gray as the granite steps. When Benjy stepped closer, he paused. They were alive. They twitched from time to time. One reached up to scratch his neck before returning to his ready position. They seemed to be breathing. Okay, that's creepy. Living statues. Where the hell had he seen that shit before? Something else waited for him at the foot of the steps. A round shield propped up against the lowest riser. Next to it was a large egg under a foot tall. As he lowered to inspect it, the sound of stone grinding on steel warned him. Something approached from behind. He reached for his weapon and whipped around, coming face to face with a creature. Like a golem, it stared at him with eyes that switched between metal and rock as though made of mercury. It wasn't intimidating, a foot shorter than Benjy. It carried no weapons. Benjy didn't drop his hand from his sword, but he relaxed his shoulders. If the creature intended to attack him, it would have done so already.
"Who are you?"
Its voice was harsh and grating. Benjy felt a sense of déjà vu like he'd heard it before. "Who are you?" Benjy snapped.
"I am the gatekeeper of the trials."
It bowed its head in greeting, then peered at Benjy as though he expected an answer to his question too. "Benjamin." He bowed his head as well. "Drag. Benjamin Drag."
"Are you here to prove yourself worthy, Benjamin Drag, Benjamin Drag?"
Benjy tilted his head and realized his mistake. No, just once. Benjamin Drag is my name. Sorry." The golem stared at him for a few seconds.
"Are you here to prove yourself worthy, Benjamin Drag?"
Yes. Yes, I am." Benjy breathed deeply to settle his nerves. "That's what I'm here to do." The Guardian bowed its head again to accept Benjy, rising to the challenge.
"To prove yourself, you must persevere. Find your limits, then surpass them. This lair will push your mind and body to their limits. It will destroy you if you cannot drive yourself beyond what you believe yourself capable of."
Right. Benjy suspected he knew what the golem meant. "How do I go about proving myself that way again?" The sound of steel and rock grinding together returned. The Guardian pointed at the egg.
"You must carry the young rock to the zenith of the stairs,"
it replied in that same unsettling, inhuman voice. Benjy glanced at the egg again. He could set aside his first assumption about what the golem meant. He doubted they used their downtime to play pickup basketball when no one else tried to pass a trial. Maybe the egg was a young rock that would form a mighty colossus of stone and metal. It didn't matter. His instructions were the same either way. Get the egg to the top of the steps. A daunting task, but Benjy preferred that to fighting for his life against a creative monster.
Wait.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?